Hi, this is Mark, and I just wanted to say a big thank you for coming along to our first feedback evening with Diane Seddon. It was a feature that you all requested, and it seemed to go down really well. I just wanted to say a little bit about the community before we move on, and the reason I set this up in September was just to bring together a range of great talkers with people who had a mutual passion and interest in photography. And since September, it's grown quite exponentially, really. And we have 330 subscribers on my mailing list, and around 53,000 people have visited the Facebook page. So it's really quite incredible. I've tried to replicate what people would ordinarily receive as part of a group or as part of a club. So I've tried to organise weekly meetings which cover a range of topics and genres to suit a variety of interests. So if you're interested in joining in any future talks or interested in hearing about any future content, have a look at the Facebook page, have a look at the website, and see if there's anything you fancy. And thanks, Diane. We are being recorded from this point, and if I could pass over to you.
Thanks, I need a sip of wine.
Yeah, wrong time, that wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Right, okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. You know what my name is, and I live in the middle of Lincolnshire, just south of Grimsby and just north of Louth. So we're backed up against the coast, so I've got nowhere to run to now from COVID. What I just want to explain, a couple of things before we set off is, I've had a look at what the images I've got already this afternoon, so I've got a rough idea of what was coming up. And what you've got to remember as we go through this evening is that this isn't like club competition judging. This isn't about judging. This is just about talking about your images, how it all looks, whether there's anything you might have thought about or not thought about, and how we can perhaps change it, make it a little bit better, or just generally amend images as we go. But really and truly, it's your work, and it's what you want it to be right at the end. I also want to explain a little bit about how I've worked over the last few years. And I've got my team with me this evening. So there's Keith Balcombe from Cleethorpes, Mike Bennett, also from Cleethorpes, and George Lill. And the four of us together have worked over the last few years and been able to achieve various distinctions. So George got his licentiateship and his CPAGB, and Mike Bennett got his DPAGB, and Keith got his C, and I got my ARPS. The way we did it partly was that we showed each other images which we projected big in the club room. Now, Cleethorpes is very fortunate in that respect. We've got our own premises and we were able to use it out of hours, as it were. But nonetheless, what we were finding was that some images project better than they print, and other images print better than they project. So sometimes it's useful to try and get a preview of whatever it is you're going to do with your image after. If you're going to show it as a DPI, just look at it big. Because what you see on your computer screen, I've got a 27-inch iMac, which is a pretty big screen. But nonetheless, when I see it projected at 6 foot, 8 foot, whatever, the mistakes that you make are multiplied, if you like. So you need to see your images big. Equally, when I did my associateship panel, the images I produced for that are not very good, or they don't look very good when they are projected. But as a very small print, and my prints were just 9x6, they looked good enough, which is obviously I passed, so obviously it was good enough. So you've got to think in two ways, really, how you are going to present your image going forward, whether it's going to be a projected image or a print, and how you expect other people to perceive it. Now, the other problem that you're probably going to get at some point down the line is screen calibration. What you see on your screen isn't necessarily what I'm going to see on my screen, because if you've calibrated your screen one way, let's assume I've not calibrated mine, I have, but let's assume that I haven't, I might be not seeing the colours how you would expect me to see them. And that could be that if you've not calibrated your screen, then that's a problem. And the other thing is when you send your pictures off to external competitions, so BPEs, FIAPs, whatever you're going to do, you need to know how that judge is going to see your image, or you may well come a little bit unstuck. So it's always good to get a good preview, and the more people you can show it to before you actually send it off somewhere, generally the better. George Lill, who's, well, for me, he's on the top row, he's got a pub behind him, he's the one that talks the most, gives me the most earache. Keith is the most logical, I would think, of us, and probably the quietest. He's waving now, yeah. But his comments are always worth listening to when he does say something. And Mike Bennett is the more creative photographer probably amongst us. Give us a wave, Mike. He's got a dog with him as well, so makes him an all-round good chap. So between the four of us, we are pretty brutal. So if I show an image to those three and it's not that good, quite honestly, I'm going to be told in no uncertain terms that it's really no good. What's be useful for you guys is to find somebody you trust. Now, if you've been to my Odd Things talk, you probably heard me go on and on about this. Who can you trust to be really honest about your images? And the problem with places like Facebook is that it's very much a thumbs up, thumbs down world, isn't it? How many times you put a picture on Facebook, or you see a picture on Facebook, and you inside you think, oh dear Lord, that's terrible. But what does it say underneath? It says, wow, fantastic, amazing, terrific, keep going, do more. If you are constantly bombarded with that kind of information without looking anywhere else, then you might well be deluded sometimes into thinking that what is being produced is really good, when in fact it isn't. The other issue, or the other places you might run across this, is places like Flickr, although you can get some good feedback from there. 500px is good for looking at other people's images, but you tend not to get the feedback always. So where are you going to go to get this feedback about your pictures? Well, you've got to find somebody. If you are a member of the RPS, then you might find one of the groups there will be able to help you out a little bit. If you're a member of a camera club with some decent photographers, then you might be able to find some help there. And if you can't get help at your own camera club, don't worry about looking at other people's, look at other camera clubs and see if anybody else is doing anything, because in theory, do you not think we should all be helping one another out a bit? So we all want to get the best photograph we can possibly produce. And what we've got to understand is that there's going to be people who are beginners who are not going to produce that startlingly good image. And they're equally very experienced photographers that still churn out the odd bad one. So you've got to look for people that you're going to trust. Is that, anybody got any comments so far? See that tumbleweed going past?
Yeah. But I've got to say, I think I agree with you. Someone messaged me actually while you were saying that, asking if I could be their person.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's really important.
I'm sure that sitting in front of me, and well, I know sitting in front of me are some very experienced photographers and very good photographers. Have you thought about mentoring someone and helping them along on their route. And for those of you who are maybe at the beginning, middle of your photographic expertise, have you thought about asking somebody that you respect as a photographer and saying, can you mentor me? Because there is no problem later on in saying, do you know what, I've had enough now. I don't want to be mentored anymore, because in theory, people shouldn't mind. I'm currently mentoring 2 people on their associateship journey, neither of whom I have ever met, but we've got on quite well over email and chat and goodness only knows what else. And as they get ideas for their projects, they send ideas through to me, and I say, yeah, it's a good idea, or really, have you thought this through completely? Because some ideas are far too complex, and I have no idea how they're going to produce images to do that. So if you're looking at your associateship or your fellowship, not only are you producing 15 or 20, 21 images, you've also got to write a statement of intent. And it's a statement of intent that is effectively, let's say you're doing your fellowship, 15 separate images, plus your statement of intent, plus the panel itself. So you've got to have an idea about how to lay out panels. And that was the problem I had partly when I did my associateship. I had an image of pylons, and I wanted it in that panel. I really liked that image and I wanted it in. And Keith said to me, and Mike said to me, what did you say, Keith? Yeah, see, yeah, slick, don't put it in. And I just kept thinking, yeah, but I really like it. But in the end, they were right and I was wrong. It didn't fit the panel, and it had to go. And it's still an image that I like, but it's not going to run anywhere going forward. So has anybody got any more questions about that?
I suppose it's worth saying that, I think you might have scared everybody there, Dan, but you're not going to be slitting anybody's throat for their images, are you?
Keith might.
I meant cut to get rid of it, but I couldn't get my finger on the mute button quick enough.
Yeah, so you need to think about what the images we're going to look at tonight. I have no idea what your plans are for these images. So if and I'm not going to ask anybody, but if I knew, I might say slightly different things. So for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to treat it like camera club, good camera club photography. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. If you want to interrupt me when your image comes up, because I've got no names on these, so I don't know whose they are. If you want to interrupt me before I start, you can say, this is for a BPE or this is for a FIAP, and I will adjust my comments accordingly. Is that fair? Are we all happy with that going forward? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Right. Okay. All right. Do you want to share some pictures with us?
Yeah,
now?
absolutely. Just to let everybody know.
Swig of my wine.
Yeah, keep going with the wine. Yeah, just let everybody. I have muted a few people, and I think I will mute people because when people are coughing and things, it's flipping to them while you're talking. But only a couple. Anyway,
the more I drink, the better the pictures get.
Yeah, and also please unmute yourself and jump in anytime. It's fine. Also, I'm just viewing these on Google Preview, so we're not using any specific software, but Diane has already seen these and had access to these beforehand. So this is all of folder A first. So folder A are the ones that we were definitely going to critique, and then B are the ones that we hopefully will be able to critique if we get time. So Diane, I'll start with this one and just say next whenever you're ready.
Right, okay. Right, okay, so what we have here is an interesting landscape with lots and lots of texture going on in it. And it's also, I would think, it's just a foggy day. So when you're taking images in this kind of locale, in this kind of weather, whilst it's great to get out and get images when the weather's not great, and I give the photographer 10 out of 10 for getting out there on a snowy, foggy, horrible day, you've got to think more about your composition really than you have when you are out on a slightly better day. So what have we got here? We've got a quarter of the picture is just fog. We're starting from the top, and there's nothing in it. So when you're looking at images like this, think to yourself, does this bit of image, does it add anything to the picture or to the story? And if the answer is no, think about cropping it off, because you can do this in whatever your software of choice is. You can crop it off and look at it, and then if you still think it should be there, you can always undo it and put it back. And similarly with the bottom of pictures, where you want to look for lead lines coming in and taking you through the image. Now we've got a definite lead line here that's coming from towards the bottom of the picture on the left hand side, and it's taking us through really to the middle-ish of the picture, halfway up. So it's in the middle up and the middle across as well. So two things I would consider with this is to maybe take about an inch or so off the bottom, so that that lead line actually comes in from the bottom left-hand corner. When that bit's not there, is it to the detriment of the image? And if the answer's no, you can cut it off. Now with the top of the picture, there's an awful lot there that has nothing in it. So maybe you would want to think about letterbox format. Don't think that because your camera produces images in a certain square or oblong or whatever, that it has to stay that way, because it doesn't. The other thing you've got to think about is when Joe Cornish takes his landscape images, there's always something very distinct in the foreground that we've laughingly called a JCB, which is a Joe Cornish boulder. But there's always be something in the foreground. And what this particular image lacks is any real foreground interest. In fact, really, there's no midground interest either. So we need to try and find something of interest in an image and actually compress that into the middle. So making this into a letterbox format will strengthen the image up. But what I'm going to say about this one particularly is that I bet you didn't just take this one, you probably got a whole set of them somewhere along the line. And I would look and see if you've got anything else that's got something in the foreground, because the colour tones, the colour range here is very minimal. We've got browns and blacks in the foreground going into tans and whites in the background. Although you've got no burnt out areas and there's no real solid blacks in there, you've got good tonal range. You might want to think about trying it in black and white and just see how it looks. But having said that, I think we're lacking in some foreground interest. We need something to draw me into the picture. And at the minute, there's just a brownish area in the middle, which has nothing in it. In a club competition, depending on what else was there, it's not one I would hold back. I think you'd be looking at marks somewhere in the region of, if you're marking out of 20, maybe 11, 12, maybe a 13. But it's not going to get really good marks, I'm afraid, for this one. So has anybody got any arguments with anything I've said? Please shout out. Again, the tumbleweed goes past. I'm just going to turn my video off. Okay, Mark, think of the next one. What's difficult for judges at club competitions especially is the huge variety of images that they get to look at. And it's always comparing apples and pears, isn't it? It's about comparing a landscape with a portrait, with something creative, with a cityscape. So it's really difficult. So I'm not going to judge Bash by any stretch, but we've got to remember as well that some judges and club competitions are going to be better than others. But please try to be a little bit forgiving of the ones that are not that good, because we've all got to start somewhere and we've all got to start learning and practicing to do things. So here we've got a studio shot. It's on a plain white background. The photographer has been very bold, I think, with the blacks and the whites here. So it's quite an interesting picture. It's going to be quite a controversial one for some judges to look at, because the areas around the sides of her legs are really quite bright. But there is still a little tiny bit of detail there. So it is just holding it in compared with what's going on in the background. However, around her waist on the right-hand side, because it's very white, I've lost her skin there on my screen. So it looks like part of her outfit is just suspended in space. And I think with images like this, we need to just hold back the skin tones to be able to differentiate the foreground to the background. Her pose is unusual, but not uncomfortable. She's got good contact with the photographer. She might not be looking directly at him or her, but she's nevertheless relaxed, I think, in front of the camera. I like the way her legs are posed, although the toe just creeping out from behind the forefoot is just a little bit awkward. So maybe you just need to think about how you're posing your model. I can see, I don't think it's my screen, round the top, right at the top edge, there's a grayer area, like a line that's just a little bit darker than white. Can you see it, Mark? Can you mark it? Just show where I mean.
Yeah,
right
Dan, that could actually be. I'll be honest with you, that could be.
It's gone now. Was that
you?
I
was going to say that could be the top of the Google screen. Sorry, just to say.
Oh, you see, you've got to be so careful. Can you move your mouse, please? Thank you very much. So we've got a lot of shadow over the face, but it's at least it's an even shadow coming in from either side. Losing a little bit of detail on the outfit right to the front round the breast area. So that's a little bit awkward. I wonder if this would work slightly better with maybe if it was in colour, because then you would see the skin tones where I've just lost them currently. I don't know how much post-processing this one's had, but I like the girl, I like the pose, I like her face. I quite even like the shadows that are coming down under her chin that almost makes it look like she's got a bit of a beard, but nevertheless, I think it's got a bit of character to it. So I think you've done quite well with this. Maybe just cut down on the post-processing a little bit, but I do like the white background, and we've got enough bit of shadow on the floor under her feet to show that she's grounded. It doesn't look like she's floating on a white piece of paper, but just watch the pose of the foot to the rear leg. But other than that, yeah, pretty good. How would I score it? It's going to get around the, for me, 16 mark, I would guess. Nobody's shouting me down yet, but feel free. Okay.
There we go. If I turn my microphone on, that would help.
It would,
please,
wouldn't it?
please do jump in if you're here and you want to chat about it. Please do absolutely come in. Thanks, Dan. I'll move on to the next one.
Right. But if you don't want to say anything out loud, put it in the chat box. Yeah. I can see it coming, scrolling up the side.
And this person said if they wanted all of these to be seen as sort of one sort of series of images.
You can't make this full screen, can you, Mark?
I thought it was full screen, and this is as big as it can get on my screen, unfortunately.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry, do you mean because you can see the toolbar at the top?
All right, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger on mine.
Yeah, people can zoom in if they want to.
This is one that I looked at quite closely, actually, when I was looking at them earlier today. And I really liked the idea of the photographer having the camera virtually on the floor, looking up through this forest of grasses and plants. I think it works very, very well. I was undecided at first about the lens flare, but with hindsight, I decided that if you took it out, I don't think it would be quite as interesting. And the fact that we've got like a panel of 4 makes it more interesting. I think one of these on their own, I don't think would stand as strong. I think you find this a lot with panels generally. With the panel I had for my associateship, for example, the individual images on that just didn't work. I entered them into a few competitions and they just didn't do very well. Partly because they were being projected, I suspect, because I wasn't sending the prints off. But this works together as a 4. And for those of you who are in camera clubs, sometimes camera clubs do run competitions for panels of 3, panels of 4, whatever. And I think that's always worthwhile doing. So it's worth working in panels good for you, then yes, it is. The job that I used to do was definitely a one-shot wonder, and I never worked in panels at all until I finally moved into a camera club actually over here in Lincolnshire, and then I started to look at panels. And they are definitely something that will make you think a little bit harder about how you present your work. This, as I say, is very good. I do like the blackness in the background. Whether it's done by flash doesn't really matter, but I suspect that the lens flare has been added afterwards, because to get that star-like effect, it's usually as a result of a longer exposure. But because it's all black in the background, I suspect that some kind of flash has been used. So I do think it works very well. I think it's very creative. It's been well put together. And it's certainly one that I would hold back for another look later on to see how I would compare it with other images. So yeah, is the photographer prepared to stand up and be counted this evening?
Yes, it's in infrared, actually, taken in broad daylight.
Ah, right.
With a fisheye lens. And I use, and it was a clear sky, and I use a fisheye lens, had to lie down most of the time. And the sky was black and it was bright sunshine.
Right, so we've got a combination of things going on here. So we've got the infrared, we've got the fisheye. Did you add the lens flare after?
No.
No, it was actually there.
Yeah, well, I deliberately put it at an angle so that the flare would show up on my lens.
Yeah. You see, this whole thing has been well thought through. This just didn't happen by accident, did it? This has been planned.
Yes.
So you've got to think generally about images as well, and plan sometimes what you're going to do. I mean, yes, it is. It's good fun to just go out and get some pictures and come back and play with them. But sometimes you really do need to have a plan. Something that you're going to have a before and an after, or ideas. I went to a talk some little time ago by a guy called Brooks Jensen, and he talks a lot about looking at what you've got on your Lightroom catalogue and treating every image as an asset, something that you might be able to use later. I mean, I delete an awful lot of stuff. I suspect from what he's saying, he doesn't delete hardly anything. He keeps it just in case. The other thing he does is he keywords everything, and that's something that I'm very sadly lacking in. I have to spend a lot of time hunting for what I want. If I got to grips with it and did all the keywording, I'm sure it'd be a lot easier. But yeah, treat everything you've got as an asset, treat things, look at what you've got, see if you can put a little panel of 4 together, or 6 or 8. You can do it in Lightroom pretty easily, you can make these things. So yeah, I really like this. To say it's one I'd hold back, and something that would probably finish up scoring quite high. Okay. So this is another image that I really like. I have got a book here called Why It Does Not Have to Be in Focus. And I'm of the opinion, and I've said this to the wrong people sometimes, that sharpness can be overrated. But what I like about this is the impression of a person. And if you think about the light that is onto the left-hand side of the figure, imagine in your head taking that out and how you would lose some of the impact to the image. So whilst I talk about less is more sometimes in images, sometimes they do need that little bit extra. There is a guy that came to do a talk at our camera club called Gareth Martin. He's done a couple of talks and he's judged for us as well. And this is the style that he talked about in some of his images. And I did go away and play with it and thought, if you get the right picture, it can work really well. And here's an example of the right picture and it working really well. And I'm sure we've all heard the expression, the figure needs to look into negative space. So some judges are going to say, well, the figure should be on the other side. But actually, I think having the figure on the right-hand side of the picture, it adds a little bit of tension to the image. So you're sort of thinking, I wonder what it is she's looking at. I wonder where the light is coming from on the left-hand side. What I don't like about it is the double white solid border. And I just think that detracts from it a little bit. I would have gone for, and you do need a border around images that are predominantly black, because when they're projected on a big screen, you'll lose it. It'll just disappear into the background. And when you've got a definite white edge on the picture, like you've got here at the top and at the bottom, it'll look a bit odd. I would have gone for a 1 pixel white border and only 1 line. I just think the second line is just a little, for me, just a little bit too much, but I love the image. It's definitely one I would hold back in any kind of competition. If this pitched up in a BPE or a FIAP even, I'd be giving it at least 4 marks out of 5, if not 5, because you don't get long to look at them. But I do really like this. I think it works well. I think the photographer's had a really good idea. Is the photographer prepared to stand up and say something?
Yeah, hi Diane.
Hi,
It's Chris Harvey. Hi, this is my image. I really liked your comments. Thank you very much. This has been an image that's been hanging around with me for probably about 8 years now, and there's a lot of history around it.
Yeah.
I take your point about the double line. It needs a line, and I think two is too much, and I think that's right. It's never been in front of a judge. It's a real Marmite image. Some people like it, some people hate it.
Yeah.
The history behind it is it's a pinhole. It's taken with a Coke can camera, exposed in studio with Rembrandt lighting, and then the paper image scanned, inverted, and then worked in Photoshop. The two lightsabers on the left-hand side are actually fluorescent light tubes in the ceiling of the studio, which was just a haphazard, by chance, freak of nature. But I really, really like this, and it is a Marmite image. There are people who will say they absolutely hate it, including my wife, but I just adore it, and I think that being a photographer nearly 50 years, it's probably my best photograph of ever.
Yeah.
It prints up nicely at a 12 by 16. It's been hanging in a few places, but as I say, it's never been judged. And you are the first person to have actually judged it and commented on it in the way you have, which I find very gratifying. So thank you.
I think it's quite ethereal.
Yeah.
I take it then that this isn't a real person.
No, it's actually not. No, it's a mannequin.
Yeah.
And the problem with mannequins, in my very limited experience, is that the shoulders are wrong, and this has been sort of cropped fairly heavily to avoid what was too wide a shoulder, so that's why it's been cropped in the way it has. There's a bit more image available below that line, but it's not of high value. It was one of those shots where I think there's about 8 in the sequence, and this was without doubt the best, with exposure time of about 4 or 5 seconds on paper, which was, I think, ASA in those days about 25. Yeah. So I'm pleased with your comments. Thank you very much.
I think the only criticism I would have, and it's a very minor one, is that just on the nose it's a little bit bright.
Yeah.
I might just burn that in a little tiny bit just to take away that highlight. But it doesn't detract that much from the image. It's be entirely up to you what you did with it long term. But I like the tension that's
and I think this is a characteristic of my photography. I like creating that tension. I like sort of startling people. My images are not chocolate box images. They are to speak to the viewer, and I think that's what I'm trying to create in this situation.
Yeah. Has anybody else got any thoughts to this one? Has anybody else got?
You hadn't told me it was a mannequin.
Sorry, Keith.
I wished you hadn't told me it was a mannequin. I thought it was an absolutely strikingly stunning model, but it's just I think it's Marmite, but I do like it as well.
Yeah, I think the only reason I thought it might have been a mannequin is because you said it was done with a pinhole, and I thought, I bet somebody couldn't have stood still for long enough. Anybody else got any comments? No?
Quite a few people have said on the chat that it's a wonderful picture, actually, Chris. So I think you've got a fan club with that one as well. Yeah,
that's it to take it via a Coke can. Yeah.
I will say, just sorry if you don't mind me saying this, Chris. Chris actually did show us the sort of image of this before, the kind of before image, which was fantastic. So we've seen that as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I mean, let's face. For a can of Coke to produce something like this is just stunning, really. So it's not what the kit you've got; it's the way you use whatever you've got.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I was at another meeting the other night, and somebody was talking about a company that produces these cans, and they're called Solar Can.
Yeah.
SOLARCAN. Yeah. And what the website was down when I tried to have a look at it, but I'm actually contemplating getting one, and having see if I can do a 6 months worth of exposure out of the back bedroom window.
Diane, don't buy them, just make them yourself. I've got about 8 in the countryside where I live that are doing exactly that at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, capturing hopefully 6 months worth of solar rays. So yeah.
Well, the only reason I was thinking of buying one is that I haven't got the photographic paper to go in it.
Buy it. Dirt cheap.
Waste.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Bye.
Right, no problem. Okay, let's look at the next one.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, so I've even got a title for this one, Awesome Path. And what I find is a lot of people take photographs from what I call 5'6" or ish, depending on how tall you are. So people stand there and they take a picture. So they look down on animals, they look down on small children, and they look down on pathways, and they look down on whatever. The problem is, of course, as we get older, you get down, you put your camera down, you can't fly and get up again. Fortunately, the person that I go out with most generally is there going, I can't get up. So what I really like about this is the fact that somebody has got lower down to take this image. Now we've got some great colours in the leaves on the floor, and we've got the patterns going through of the tree roots leading us along the path. So we've got good lead lines taking us in. So we follow the path and we follow the path, and what do we come to? We come to almost the dead end. So whilst I like the angle, we need to be thinking more compositionally about what is at the end of this picture. Now, if you look up to the top of the picture as well, we've got a little bit of sky. Looks like it was probably a bit of a bland sky. So you, photographer, have done very well. You've made the right decision to cut the vast majority of it out. So a couple of comments I would make then is that because we've got these lovely lead lines coming in, if we crop off a bit of the bottom to where the first tree root comes in on the left-hand side, then we've got a strong diagonal taking us into the picture, and we can follow that tree line, that tree root line down along the pathway. You might also consider taking some of the top off, because does that sky add anything to the image? And the answer is probably yeah, not really. So I'd be inclined to take a bit off the top and a bit off the bottom. So now we're looking at a square format picture. And there are settings on some cameras, it's certainly on my Fuji, I can actually set it to shoot on a 1:1 format. So you can actually go out and think, today I'm going to take square photos. And that can be a challenge all on its own. So I like the colours, I like the richness of this. I would have liked to have seen the colours boosted even a little bit more to make it look even more autumnal. And I'm really sorry I didn't do this at the beginning for the first couple of pictures, and I should have done, and I apologise. But has the photographer got anything to say about this image, about why you took it, what your thought process was? No. Okay, don't worry about that, not a problem. This is only about thinking through your images and why you take them and how you take them. If there'd been, let's say there'd been a dog on the foot on the path, imagine a small dog about 2/3 of the way into the picture, would that have strengthened the image up a little bit? So you can ask yourself these questions, and it's not always easy when you're there taking them. But in a woodland like this, again, this won't be the only photo that you took. I'm sure you took a number of them, and maybe from different heights and different locations. Use your software. The auto button in Lightroom used to be the please ruin my picture button. And it isn't anymore. It's really quite intuitive. So you can press the auto button and see what happens, and the same in Photoshop or Elements or whatever software you're using, and just see how it looks. And you may well have done that with this particular image, but I think it needs a little bit more contrast towards the top, just something to bring out that richness. But I like the idea. I like the fact that you've got low down. I think you've got some potential here with this style of image. So whoever you are, keep doing it, and it will come. Okie dokie. This is one that got sent direct to my house earlier today, was it, or yesterday? And what I really liked about this was this very shallow depth of field. We know that it's autumn, it's got those beautiful, rich, golden colours at the bottom of the image, but it's balanced pretty well by that out of focus tree in the background. But we can see in that tree the colours reflected from the foreground. So we've got lots of foreground interest. We've got midground interest with the tree, and then we've got a beautiful diffused background going further back. Specular highlights, some people are going to like them, some people are not. I would maybe clone out the odd one, especially the one that's almost bang in the middle of the picture. Thing about light areas on the edge is that they can distract. And generally when you're looking at an image, you tend to go for the lighter areas of the image first and then come back to the darker areas. I think the combination of colours and textures here works very well though. I do like the ferns in the foreground, and you can even see a bit of cobweb going through them as well. Does the owner want to say anything? Is the owner even here? Difficult to know. Would I hold this one back? Probably. I would probably hold it back in a competition and give it another look and compare it with everything else that I got. But I would definitely clone out the specular highlight that's right in the middle of the picture. I'm not so bothered about the ones around the edges, just that one I just find a little bit, it just attracted my attention rather more than it probably should have done. You might want to think about, it's got a bit of a vignette at the bottom, or it looks as though it has. Just duplicating that at the top, just bringing it a little bit darker so that the real centre of the picture is just that little bit brighter, but beautiful, rich colours. So yeah, well done on that one. Yeah. This looks very much in the style of the Catalan photographer, whose name has just gone completely out of my tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Photographing in the round. This is virtually how I did my ARPS panel. So what I like about this is the fact that this bland sky, because it looks as though it's been a pretty white sky, has been mostly filled in as you've worked your way around this tree with other trees in the background, but you still manage to keep the foliage beautifully central in the picture. Now, there are judges that don't like things bang in the centre of the frame. But it can work, and this just shows that it can work. So what I like about it is I especially like what's going on around the tree trunk at the bottom and the fallen leaves on the floor, and the fact that the grass underneath is quite a pale green, because I found personally when I merged these together, the green's got a bit over the top. So I think you've toned that back a little bit and you've done it quite well. I might have been inclined to give the tree just a little bit more space around it on either side, because it looks to me as though the branches on the left-hand side are actually running out of the shot a little bit, whereas on the right-hand side it's quite well balanced into the frame. You could fix that with a little bit of surreptitious cloning, or by moving your layers around a little bit. I do like the heat of the image. We know that it's later on in the year because that's when these things blossom and get these beautiful coloured leaves. But nonetheless, we've got that heat coming through and that works really well. I like the fact that we've got ghostly tree trunks on the right-hand side and a little bit on the left as well. Maybe this isn't a criticism, this is a suggestion. To take a few more images and add them in. The more images there are on these layers, the more painterly it becomes. And this is just a personal preference from my point of view. I'd have liked to have seen a few more layers, and that would have filled the background in just that little bit more. But on the whole, I think it's a really good effort. It's one I would hang on to, certainly, in a competition. It's extraordinarily creative and very, very impactful. So, yeah, I really like this. Are we going to say anything about it? Any photographer?
It's actually mine, and it was actually all done in camera on average mode, and
Right.
it's 3 sets of 9 images. So I took 9 and then used that as the base image for the next set of 9.
Right.
And I've worked my way round the tree.
Right. Have you thought about, instead of doing 3 sets of 9, taking 50 individual pictures and then blending them together in your software afterwards?
No, I haven't. It's certainly worth a try, yes.
Right, okay. Is it a Canon camera you've got?
It is, yes.
Right, yeah, because I had a Canon DX a while ago. That's why I thought about it, because that does do 9, and I never really liked what it did. You've not got as much control over the blending modes because it only gives you a limited number. If you take your 50 pictures or whatever it happens to be and you take them into Photoshop, you can use any of the blending modes that Photoshop gives you. Have you got Photoshop?
Yes, I have, yes.
Right, okay. You can stack it all into Photoshop, all of them. And if you message me later, Caroline, I'll send you a script that you can add into Photoshop that will take a lot of the donkey work out of it for you. And you can play around with them to your heart's desire. But it means that initially, Photoshop will give you a good idea of how it's going to look at the end. And then you can tweak it and make it your own.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks very much for that.
Just send me a message with your email address on it. Don't put it in the chat box.
No.
But just if you contact Mark, or he'll contact me, and I can send it out to you.
I think I've got your email because you're coming to talk to my club on Tuesday night.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, Middlesbrough.
Am I coming on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Where am I going?
This is where you find the diary clash.
Oh, gallery, Middlesbrough.
Right, yes.
Right, okay, yeah. Right, I'll see you on Tuesday.
Thanks for that, Diane. That's lovely.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? Quick
Yes.
one. Well, it's really to Mark. Mark, what about having a session on this style? Because I find it fascinating, and I think it's very creative, and I would love to know more about it.
The Carolyn style. Chris.
Yes, it's Pet Ventosa type style, and I think a session on that would be really, really good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Cityscape. Liverpool, obviously. And I think the photographer here has chosen to do this in black and white. And it works really well. I mean, I know that sometimes images like this can look really good in colour, but I suppose because I know how this looks in real life, I know that there will be a lot of different colours going on in the background. What I like here is the fact that we've got this very solid lamp in the foreground. I don't think that distracts from the image at all, especially as I've got 3 more taking me through the picture over to the right hand side. It's a bit, but because that first lamp is where it is, I'm wondering if it just makes the picture a little bit unbalanced. Maybe think about cropping a bit off the left hand side just so that it balances the image out a little bit. Because I think it's the Maritime Museum, I think, And what I like about it is the reflection of the building in the glass that's just behind the lamp. But you're not getting that in the darker part of the image, in that part of the building. I like the building on the right-hand side as well, because can do a bit of wirism there. I think you can see into the offices, and that can be quite interesting. I remember taking a picture across Manchester Piccadilly Gardens to a new office block that had been built there. And when I started looking at the images, there was an interesting thing going in one of the offices, shall we say, which I probably wasn't supposed to see. But I've been taking it from another office block at the other side, so people should be trying to draw the blinds or not do it. Anyway, that's another story. So what I like about this is the fact that you've taken it in black and white. I like the reflections in the buildings. We've got the word gallery at the bottom, but that's not too distracting. And I like the way you've left the people in at the bottom as well, because that gives us a sense of scale. On the left-hand side, right at the bottom, there's a white blob, and I'm not quite sure what that is. I understand why it's there, because if you cropped any more off, we'd have lost the people on the right-hand side of the building. So that's a little bit difficult. I might have gone for a bit of surreptitious cloning though, and lost that white area right from the edge. As I say, your eyes do tend to get drawn to the lighter part of the images, and that little blob is even brighter than the white buildings right in the background. So we've got blacks and we've got whites, but we haven't got the white in the right place. So I would have tried to lighten up the buildings in the middle, just so that your eye's drawn into them a little bit more. And you can do that by just maybe fiddling around with the contrast a little bit. But on the whole, I quite like the image. I think it draws you in, it gives you an idea of what the city is like. The sky isn't completely bland. There's a few details in there, and I might have tried to just bring out a bit more detail in that sky as well. It's probably one I would hold back for another look later on. For a competition theme of buildings or architecture, it would be fine. Look at the lamp that's closest to us as well. There is a couple of posters or stickers on it down at the bottom. I think I would have been tempted to tidy those up a little bit, and the next one along as well. I think I've tidied that up. So I think this just needs a little bit of tidying up, but I do like the image. Does the photographer want to say anything?
This one is mine. It's something that I've worked on quite a bit. It took quite a lot of balancing out to get it. It was very flat when I took it, and to try and bring out the light and shade in it took quite a bit of time. I totally agree with you about the blot in the bottom and the two things on the bottom of the lamppost. I think you get so focused on other areas of your image to get to what you're trying to do that you then forget to look around. And I totally agree. I'm not sure that I like the idea of cropping it on the left. For me, that changes the format of the image, and I don't like it sort of made squatter. So I don't think I would do that, but I do take your other points. Thank you for that.
Well, that's absolutely fine. Just thinking about images generally, and yes, some do need. Have you got Photoshop, Linda?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Have you tried using the texture slider?
Yes, I do use it quite a bit. I'd done a course, an RPS course quite recently that was looking at architectural photography and selecting parts of the image and working on individual parts of the image to manipulate it so that you were bringing out whatever you wanted to bring out in the image. And this was my first effort at trying to do that. And trying to do it on an image that I liked the composition of, but the overall effect of it, certainly in colour, was very monotonous, and it was very flat when you moved it to black and white. So I did get to a place where, you know, sort of making various selections and putting gradients on various selections to try to differentiate between different parts of the image. And I was starting to understand what the guy who was teaching us was meaning, but it's my first attempt, and I just thought I would put it in for some comment.
I know what you mean about going picture blind. Absolutely. What I generally recommend, I'll tell you a quick story after, but what I generally recommend is that when you've done a lot of work on a picture, put it away and don't look at it for a week. And then go back and look at it again, and you will see things that you didn't see when you keep staring at it. And the story that goes with it is that I did a lot of work on a picture that had 6 horses in it and 1 rider. And he was stood on the back of a couple of horses. And one of the horses' heads came in the middle of the rider's legs, in between his legs. So I got rid of the horse's head, and I showed it to my gang of 3, if you like, who then calmly pointed out that although I got rid of one of the horse's heads, I'd still left legs in enough for 6. But I hadn't seen it. And this is why it's sometimes really good to get somebody else that you trust to look at your images. Because then I was able to go away and get rid of the 4 legs that were no longer required, and the right numbers were there. But it's very likely that if he hadn't said anything, I might just have let it go out into the world with too many legs on it. But yeah, put them away. Leave them for a week, let them stew in their own juices, go away and work on something else, and then come back to them. So not knowing what the original picture was like, I'd be happy enough with this. And I know what you mean about the crop. It's just it was just a passing thought. But you can just clone that white area out reasonably.
Yeah, I will certainly do that. Thank you for your comments, Diane.
Thanks for people getting involved as well. It's nice to hear both sides, isn't it?
It is. And I apologise for not doing that right at the beginning. I should have done. Another panel of 4. And I was actually really attracted to this. I wasn't sure, and I am still not sure, and maybe you can tell me later, what the numbers are, because I'm not certain, and it also looks as though they've been reversed as well, so the numbers don't look the right way around. But my overall impression was one of being in a prison, a struggle to see, to look out, to get this view from behind. And not only are we barred from seeing by the lines going across the image, but the fact that the image itself in the background they're all out of focus. And in the same breath, I think it still works. The only thing I would have done is with the bottom right hand picture, because you've got this big white border on it and you've got whites on the edge of the picture, it just sort of flows into the border, and maybe a 1 pixel black line just along the bottom would have just separated it off from whatever the background is. I'm very intrigued as to what the thought process was behind this. But I just kept looking at what looks like the letter E at the bottom, which is the wrong way round, and the letter S, I think it is, which seems to be the right way round. and then on the other one there's an M, I think, at the bottom, and maybe the picture top left could have been a bit more balanced with the other three to give us that more. It's almost like looking out of a hole, like through a hole in the ground into a grid. That it's really does feel like I'm in prison. It's interesting, the effect. If you're going to present these as a panel of 4 like this, though, the 2 pictures on the left are very, very black in terms of black and white, whereas the 2 on the right are a much paler grey colour. And I think if you're going to do this as a panel, I think they all need to be the same tonal range. Is the photographer here? Would you want to say something about what you've done and why you've done it?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
So this is just a panel of pinhole images. It's a bit unfair, really, Diane, because it's a part of a larger body of work, emerging body of work. So it's not really, you can't really judge it by single image. And I'm not a single image person anyway. I don't do single images. But the feedback that you gave is perfect, really. It gives me just what I need. Absolutely perfect. That's what I needed to hear. And it's great to know that it's hard to understand what it is. And it's absolutely spot on that it is from under, you said from as if looking from a hole in the ground out. That's absolutely perfect. Perfect, in fact. Too perfect to be true. So just to explain, this is, I'm trying to get away from controlling the camera, and actually my photography is about reducing control as much as possible, giving control away. So pinhole photography is one of the ways, because there's very little control you have over it. Yeah. And another way is that I can't really change it in much sort of the results of this, because I want them to be accurate, not adjusted only minimally to for the tonal range and so on, but not actually manipulated in any way. This is produced using a camera that in the times of the Cold War was used in the UK, across the country for, it's called ground zero indicator.
Right.
And it is a pinhole camera. It has it's 4-directional, which means you were guessing right, east and south and west. Mm-hmm. And so would you have seen the north on the black one, you'd probably get the whole idea. And that's why they position in that order. So it is the 4 cardinal points of the compass.
Right.
And so the camera faces 4 ways. And the idea was that this device was sitting outside, and there were plenty of them in the UK, all across the UK. And they're the ones that would have possibly alerted you if there were a nuclear explosion somewhere nearby. This is the device that would have alerted you as a resident civilian that, to have your 4-minute warning, perhaps.
It's really got that feel about it, like something horrid is about to happen. Yeah.
Well, what is interesting, Diane, is that I haven't manipulated any of this, really. This camera's got its own mind. This is all produced using paper negatives. And the only manipulation I get, I try to do as little as possible with it. I have to scan them and process them digitally because this is the positive you're looking at. The reason they inverted, that's another interesting point, that this is how they are in the camera. So they put in a special grid against the grid. The grid allows to pinpoint the ground zero of the nuclear explosion.
Right.
And so somebody would be sitting, scientific advisor would be sitting down in a bunker, not looking through the hole up, but actually looking at this and saying, oh, I see this is where the explosion is, so and calculating where exactly it is, and then would be able to tell people on the ground if anybody's left alive.
I can see that, yeah, as a larger body of work. Are you going to produce a book?
I'm not sure yet at this point. It's sort of, I've got material now. enough really, but the concept, I need to work on the concept a bit more. It needs to be accurate, so I don't want to manipulate it, but it's possible to do in the book, it's possible to do it online, possible to do both, really. If you have any tips, any hints, what, you know, any gut feelings, what's best, or how it would work. I've had some feedback from different people, and somebody who runs a gallery suggested it would be good as a gallery, sort of as an exhibition. As a panel, basically, panel of images with some.
Yeah, I think it would make a sensational panel if you presented this to, let's say, the Royal Photographic Society with your statement of intent, explain what it is you were trying to do. I think it's definitely got some mileage in it. It's totally different. It's so not camera club. It's got Anna written all over it. It's your own story, isn't it? The style.
Yeah, it's I even thought that's why I submitted so late, because I thought I shouldn't really even submit because it's totally different kettle of fish. It's not. It should be judged. You can't judge it by a single image. You can't give any technical advice on it. It is what it is. Yeah. But with your feedback, absolutely fantastic. Is that what I needed to hear? What I needed is really to have an answer to a question for somebody who doesn't know what it is, where it comes from, and what it's all about. How does it feel to look at it? What kind of feelings does it give you? And you gave me perfect feedback. Basically, that's what I need to hear.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think it's a really interesting piece of work altogether. It's just so different than anything I've seen before. But yeah, carry on, please. You know, keep us all updated with.
I will definitely work it out when it's ready. It's not ready yet, but pandemic doesn't help. The COVID doesn't help.
I can see that some of the comments in the chat. Everybody
haven't seen any
saying that it's really interesting and fascinating. And
you have to send us an email, Anna. When you finished it, or send us an email and we'll share it.
To reach you, Mark, I'm actually an IPS member, but I came across you on Eventbrite by accident. I just stumbled across your event, and I didn't even know. It didn't say anywhere that it was Royal Photographic Society. So I just thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should take an opportunity. And only when I logged into there, I realized this is IPS, because I recognize it. I'm a member as well.
It's good that you've shown 4 of them, because if there'd just been one on its own, I think it would have been much harder to try and work out what was happening. So the fact that we've got the set, if you like, that particular set there, and now I understand what it is you're trying to do with them. I take back the comments about the 2 on the left being darker than the 2 on the right, because that's just how it's coming out the camera, isn't it?
They are, yeah. And one thing, do you think it? Can I ask a question? Do you think it works? What I did here is there's many different ways of linking them or putting them in a panel. It doesn't have to be 4. It could be more. But here I thought, well, what can I show you? And I thought, well, maybe the best way to show it without having any captions or any explanations is actually putting north, east, west, and south on the panel. This is 4 directions of the compass.
The only thing I find a bit uncomfortable about the top left-hand one is the real massive plaque at the bottom. It doesn't sit with the other 3 particularly well. But when you've got all your other images together, maybe that one gets swapped out for something else. I don't know. It depends on what you want to do with them, because it's your artistic vision here. It's not mine. I'd be fascinated to see how it finished up.
Yeah, I think keep us updated, Anna. But I think we are going to have to move on, Diane.
Yes,
really. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thanks for sharing that, though.
Thank you. Yeah, well done, Mark. Keep me moving.
No, come on. Well, I'm just thinking about your wine, Diane.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about that. Okie dokie. So from one set of images to something completely different. So we've got a sinking boat in the foreground. Now, when I looked at this yesterday, that my first thought was the horizon's not straight. And when I thought about it afterwards, I thought, well, it might just be the angle from which the picture's been taken. But even so, I think when you're presenting images like this, you need to make it at least look like the horizon is straight, just because of the sort of image it is. What you want to do is add onto the left-hand side of the picture is all the water pouring out onto somewhere else. But having said all that, we've got good lead line. We've got the sinking boat in the foreground, which is interesting all by itself. And then we've got another 3 or 4 boats leading us through the picture, and they're right in the middle of the picture, but I still think that's okay. And then we've got the posts in the background. I sort of like the posts, and I sort of don't like the posts. And I think what I'd like to do is take them out and see what it would look like without them, and then maybe put them back afterwards if that's what we wanted to do. Because we've got the line of boats exactly where they are, I really would like to put the boat that's partway underwater a little bit more onto the third. So I would take I'd crop a little bit off the bottom and a little bit off the left-hand side just to bring it in a little bit. And then I think I'd have to play around with it. One other thought I had was have you thought about doing it as in portrait format and lose the sides altogether? And then you really will focus on the boat, because that's the wine, you see. Because the sea is so bright and there's so many highlights on it, my eyes sort of dodging about, looking at those highlights. And the bit we want to start at is the boat that's closest to us. So the highlights on the water over the boat there don't worry me too much, but the highlights further back do. The sky is really quite bland, there's nothing there. So my question is, do we even need that horizon in? I suspect this is a picture of the boats and nothing else. It's been titled Going Down, so let's focus on the boat that's going down. We can quite cheerfully take away all the extraneous material and focus just on those boats. I would ramp up the texture on it a little bit, and maybe even this is an HDR slider. I would give it a little bit more contrast, not too much with HDR, but a little bit more, just to bring out some more detail in the boats. Does the photographer want to say anything? Silence. Okay, that's not a problem. Square it up. That's the first thing to do, is make sure that your horizons are always straight, and then look round the edges. Something's gone wrong with the picture, Mark.
What's wrong with it? Can you not see it?
Can you see the box in the middle?
No, I can't.
Right, must be my screen then. It wasn't there a second ago, so it really doesn't matter. I would just focus on sharpening it up a little bit, not because it's out of focus, just because it needs that little bit more detail. And focus on the word on the back of the boat, limpet. And say, just take some of the sea away and just concentrate on the boats. But I think, you've got the makings of a pretty good image there. Image 1. Okay, whilst I like the idea behind this, when I was saying earlier that sometimes less is more, I think this needs less. When I looked at it at first, I thought, I don't know what I'm looking at. Now, when you as the photographer present an image to somebody else to look at, what you've got to remember is that you are emotionally involved with that image. You are tied into it. You understand perfectly what it is you want to convey to the viewer. What you've got to understand is that the viewer doesn't always get that. It doesn't get what it is that you're trying to convey. And for me, this is one of those images. I don't quite get what it is you're trying to show me. So I don't mean to be cruel, but the bit on the right-hand side of the picture reminds me of a piece of bread, which doesn't tie in terribly well with the flower that's on the left-hand side. Now, the flower on the left is beautifully taken. And I really like that with what's going on to the right of it. But right on the right-hand side of the picture, I'm really not sure what that is. Part of me thought that it might, and I'm making it up now as I go, so you'll have to forgive me. I wondered if some of it had been done underwater or whether it was done with a block of ice. But what I shouldn't be doing is trying to analyse it to that level of detail. So I'm focusing on the bit that I like, which is a flower on the left-hand side, and some of the petals to the right of that, but not the part right on the right-hand side. Can the photographer say something about it, please?
Yes, yeah, it's my image.
Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it was a Pyrex dish in the garden that had been put in the freezer and then it was melting.
Right.
So the stripes across it are the shadows, and then I think I put some beer in it for some reason. Which is the brown bit, but it's almost like you've got two images in one in a way, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Right, well, it's good that you can see where I'm coming from on this, but the picture of the flower, though, is beautiful, and I do like the lighting and the shadows. I think that works really well. But you see what I mean about the bit on the right-hand side? Like I said, it just occurred, and I thought, it's the bottom of the pan, isn't it? The bottom of the dish.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, now you've told me, I can work it out.
So you could.
Did you use a macro lens?
No, I just use a phone.
Right, yeah. I stick to flower photography. That works. I don't know in isolation, but the flower part works really, really well. This would lose itself. Excuse me. In some kind of club photographic thing, because of the confusion in the image. Top right hand corner as well has got a black area in it, so always look round the edge of your picture as well when you think you've finished. Look round the edge of your picture and see if there's any extraneous bits coming in, and lose those. But I think your picture here, if you crop that down to portrait format and just use that one flower, I think you've got a stronger image there than you have with the whole lot.
Yeah, that's useful, thanks.
Okay.
Diane, if I was just about to say, I think the next one, we're around about halfway through when we get to the next one. So after this next one, shall we take a 5-minute break? Just to
I can top my wine up then.
Is that all right? Okay, get some more wine then. Yeah, you're fine. I'm thinking about that wine.
Well, there's not much left, look.
Exactly, you've got to have some more.
Oh, everybody go, oh, baby Robbie. I mean, I love photographing birds. I just think they're superb. And whilst we see lots of really dramatic images of birds in flight and birds killing one another and catching things and what have you, I think there's a lot to be said for a bird portrait. And the robin is a sort of the British bird, isn't it? Everybody loves a beautiful robin. It's been very strongly backlit, and that's why we've got this white halo round. Now, if that's the look you were going for, then that's great. But I think, to me, it looks just a bit too burnt out. Having said that, you've got the catch light in the bird's eye. It's beautifully sharp. I love the way the feathers are all being puffed up. Now, remember what I was saying before about light areas on the edge of the picture. In the top right hand corner, we've got quite a very pale yellow. I think we've got a bit too much image on the right of the bird. Now, I know it needs somewhere to look into, but I wonder if that's a little bit much. Plus, at the bottom, the green stops and it starts to go blue. Now, that could be a fence or a wall or whatever. So I would take a bit off the bottom and certainly some off the right-hand side. The background's lovely, it's great and diffused. But we've got this highlight round the bird. I think as an artistic shot, it works very well. And if you're happy with it, then that's really all that matters. If you're putting this into a club competition, you would get marks knocked off for the blown out areas underneath the bird and the blown out area to the left of the bird on the rock that it sat on. Artistically though, it's a lovely picture. Does the photographer want to say anything?
Hi, thanks. Actually, you've answered my question. That's why I put it in. I liked the lighting coming from the back. It was one of those accidental ones. Mm-hmm. I liked it, but I was concerned about the would it be thrown out of the competition because of the halo. Basically, I just didn't know how it would be received. It's dodgy, obviously.
Yeah. It's always worth trying these things. And the thing is, if you had exposed for those highlights, it would have been extraordinarily dark in the foreground. And then it's very difficult to start balancing that light with a bird that ain't going to sit there for any length of time. So the only way you can compensate for that is to expose for the background in terms of lighting and then actually add a little bit of flash in the foreground. That's really the only way you could have done that. But on the whole, I like the pose of the bird. I love the way it's sort of all puffed up and looking fat. It just works really well. But just watch what's going on around the edge. Like I say, at the bottom, you've got that bit of a blue line, which I think it might be a bit of fencing. You've got plenty of room to actually crop in here. And really emphasise what's going on with the bird, because it's lovely and sharp. I like all the detail in the feathers, so well done.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Right, cup of tea time.
Yeah, cup of tea. Okay, everybody. What I'll do is I'll pause the recording in a second. Thanks very much for getting involved, by the way, as well. It's been lovely to hear both sides. Far better than a club competition, Diane. I'm sure you'll agree. And we'll sort of come back together at 8:40, if that's okay for the second half, guys. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for taking part as well. Okay, Diane, I've just got my cup of tea back. How are you feeling? All right, have you refilled that wine glass?
I've refilled it with sparkling water, if I'm going to be really honest. If I have alcohol too close to bedtime, I don't sleep.
Right.
And I'm a bit of an insomniac at the best of times, so or the worst of times. So I'm actually better off just with something simple now. It's got a hint of pink in it because there was a drop left in the bottom.
There you go. That's enough for anybody. That's enough for anybody.
Mm.
Just want to sort of reiterate what Diane said saying before we carry on. Please feel free to jump in at any time. Give us your opinions. It's lovely to hear some background to these as well. Really, really nice. Okay, so are we okay to carry on with the second part, Dan? Is that okay? Second half, rather?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Share my screen again, and we will get going. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Oh, cracky, see? What's really good about images like this is that they are sort of abstract, and yet you know exactly what it is that we're looking at. So we got fairly close to the tree and looked up at it a little bit, so it might be leaning backwards a little bit, but it actually doesn't matter. I think the fact that it's in monochrome works really well. We've got that impact of the thick tree trunk at the bottom. We've got the fence line running across, and that sort of gives it a good grounding. And you can actually see where the horizon is if you look carefully through the branches of the tree. And in this case, the white sky actually really doesn't matter. It could be infrared, I'm really not sure, or it could just be, hoarfrost. But either way, it really doesn't matter. But what you've got to remember is when you are showing images to other people, that they may well misinterpret what it is you're trying to show them. Again, in the talk that I do on Odd Things, which is about photographic creativity a bit, I do give an example of an aircraft that I just described as lightning, and the judge didn't know what a lightning aircraft was, neither did he know that it was under restoration, and maybe I should have titled it more accurately to give the person a bit of a clue. I can see what the title is for this one is Just Breathe, and I think that works really well. Does a photographer want to say something?
Oh, hi, yes, thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate those.
Oh, you're really quiet. Can you just go a bit louder for me?
Let me see if I can turn this up. Hang on a second.
I've turned the sound up of mine a bit.
That's much better now, Tanya, actually.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I'm using headphones. My daughter was cooking in the kitchen, so I put headphones in so that I could hear you. Yes, thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate that. And this tree is actually quite close to where I live, and I went for a walk was actually just a few days ago on a really cold, frosty morning. So it was really frosty and the ground was really frosty. But I do really like infrared. So although I didn't take it with an infrared camera, when I was processing it, I did want to kind of have that sort of feel about it.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I called it Just Breathe is because when I looked at it, the really fine branches just reminded me of the lungs and sort of all the alveoli that you get in the lungs. And if you turn the picture upside down, it could almost look like a lung, I thought. So it just kind of,
there's lots you could do with this. You could crop in really tight and just take part of the tree and that would work. Or you can leave, have the whole of it and that still works. I think the monochrome is a really excellent choice for this image, and I actually quite like the fact that the branches are cropped off at either side, and if you crop some off the top to match, that would still work. So I think the composition is good, and I think this says a lot about working locally. I've got a friend of mine that does the same walk. He calls it walking around the horse field, and he probably does it 3 or 4 times a week, and he still manages to take interesting photographs of just the same walk. So we don't have to go far, and I think we all tend to think you've got to go miles away to get a good picture, and it's not always true. You should be able to get something in your back garden or, you know, just around the corner. So well done on this one. It's a really good image. It's strong. It just got that sense of longevity in the tree itself. I think it works very well. It's got a real artistic feel to it. So well done.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Tanya.
I should have added, if it was in a competition, I would have definitely held that one back. Okay, light over peaks class A. I'm not quite sure what the
I imagine the class A is because it's in folder A, so it could be that one.
Oh, of course, yeah, light over the peaks.
It was just the fact I didn't know how to put it in anywhere else, so I just marked A by the side of it.
Right, okay. What I like about this is this dramatic sky. It's always good to have a bit of drama in a landscape, and we can see the shafts of light coming through the clouds and hitting the ground lower down. I think it's a little bit dark for me at the bottom, just a little bit too dark. I think I'd have liked to have seen a little bit more light in there, just to give me a tiny bit more detail. But I like to be able to look through the trees, between the trees. That's where I'm drawn in. So the bit to the right of the tree on the right, I'm not quite as interested in that as I am looking at the view down the valley between the trees. And I can see, presumably, the sunlight shafting on a building. So there's that little touch of white right in the middle. And whilst it's the sort of thing that I would normally say, oh, I think we need to clone that out, I'm actually glad that it's there, because the tonal range in the mid-ground and up to the sky, there's not a lot of tonal range in there. Your blacks are very much in the foreground, and the sky is very, very bright at the top. So 2 things I would do. And you have to be careful with this because you don't want to flatten the tones in the image any. Is to just lighten the foreground just a little bit, just so we've got a bit more detail in. But I would like to see the sky where it's really burnt out, just darkening down a tiny bit so that it's not quite so bright. Because I know I keep saying this, but you do look at the brightest part of the image. And you need to be very conscious about where you look. When you look at other people's work, look at other people's work a lot. It's easier to see somebody else, isn't it? Is to see your own sometimes. And just sort of try and clock what you saw first in the image, and that will help you with your own. Places like 500px is actually quite good. You can have a free account there, it doesn't cost anything to go and look at other people's pictures. And what I've done on the 500px site is I've made a gallery of other people's images for me to go and look at. So if I see something that inspires me or I just like the looks of it, I've just made a little gallery of other people's pictures. I put some of mine on as well just to show willing, but really it's for looking at other people's. And it's like we now with the lockdown that we've got and we have had for nearly a year now, I've noticed that some camera clubs are doing their exhibitions online. So if you can find them, you can go and look at exhibitions that you probably wouldn't normally get to. I went and looked at one in Essex, and I've been to look at one in Scotland, and I just wouldn't have done because they wouldn't have been online before. So it's always really good. So going back to your picture again, sorry, I got a bit distracted there. I do like the way I'm drawn into it. Going through, but I just think you just need to just watch on that tonal range a little bit. Have you got Photoshop?
No.
No.
The bank account wouldn't allow for it.
What do you use to process your imagery?
Basically, at the moment, I'm using Affinity.
Right. Okay. Infinity will do. Oh, sorry, Affinity will do lots of things. So try looking at maybe boosting the contrast a little bit in the mid-ground, and that might bring the tonal range down a little bit in the sky. and just see how you go. If you can do graduated filters on it, you know, run a grad on the bottom, it'll just lighten it up, but it'll fade it in as it goes up, and that'll look quite well, and take a bit off the right hand side. I think you've got the makings of a good landscape there.
We'd actually been out walking, and this was the 3 minutes when we started to dry out because it was throwing it down as rain. And the sun came out, so it was turn around, take the picture. Like you say, I normally put them away for about a month and then bring them back out again.
Yeah.
And I've looked at that, and I have shown it to someone else. I said, I think I want to cut some off the side, the right-hand side, and oh no, don't do that. No, you leave that there because you need that. And I still think, I think with what you've said, it does want cropping a bit.
You know what? Sorry, I've just covered the camera up. You could crop down to below that really white area of sky.
Yeah.
And you would still have enough picture left.
Yeah.
And I think that would work quite well. Yeah.
I tried one last night, messing about with it in Affinity, and I've done it in colour. And that is what I've done. I took a lot of the top down, a lot of the bottom off, just to see what it looked like, and left it as a colour shot.
Yeah. Well, so you can always put it, if you don't like it, you can always put it back after.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people don't experiment with their pictures. They just think that that's it, that's what they've taken, so that's what they've got to give you. And I always encourage people to just play around with the crop. You know, try a portrait crop, try a letterbox crop, try a square crop, and just play around with it. Because sometimes you don't see it until you've done it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can always undo it again afterwards. Never forget you can undo it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with everything you've said.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my tyres are still up on the car.
Yeah. Thanks, Edward, for sending that in as well.
There's only one thing, Mark.
Yeah.
How do we change my name on the screen?
Can I talk to you about that another time? Because I don't know. I don't know at the moment, but I'll find out for you.
Whereabouts in the Peaks was it?
From Kerbar Edge.
Oh, right, yeah. I should have known, really. I know Kerber quite well. Right, here we go. Common frog. They're fabulous things to photograph. I spent a lot of time photographing a frog when we were locked down in the spring, and I've got a pond at the back of the house. And I'd never bothered with them before, but because I had nothing better to do with my life, I got my macro lens out. And I got lower and lower and lower down to the water level till I suddenly realised that the water was actually going up the lens hood of the camera. So yeah, you need to get low down to these. I quite like the angle that you've taken here and the shallow depth of field that you've selected. So the frog's got somewhere to look. I like the sharpness of the image where the frog's actually pointing his nose to. I think you've caught the colour in the eye really, really well. Now, whoever's taken this, I suspect you didn't just take this one, you've taken a whole multitude of them from various different angles, like I did. I nearly fell in the damn pond at one point trying to get the picture, which I'm sure would have entertained my husband greatly. And what I found, this is my limited experience of photographing frogs, is that to get in front of them and get a headshot from the front. Now, the person who took this picture is struggling with a microphone, so he said, I took this shot in my garden during first lockdown. Funnily enough, that's when I took it, with a Canon 35 RF macro. No idea that we had frogs in the garden, but during an early hose, this little guy decided to stay put long enough for me to get the camera out. Had to crouch down really low and try not to fall in the pond. See, it's obviously contagious. Was tricky keeping it steady enough, handheld, as too low for the tripod. Yes, mine was too low for the tripod as well. A lot of editing in the water to stop it causing problems. And I took a ton, and this was the best one. Yeah, so I like the angle. I like the fact that you've worked on it afterwards. And yeah, you said there's no access from the front of the pond. I do apologise, and I'm a she. I do I can't tell from your title, can I? Mitch Picks. It doesn't tell me a lot. They never turn round and face you. They're always a pain like that. This is wildlife. I have a lot of bum shots of animals, birds, everything. So I like this. I think that maybe you could even crop a little bit more off to really focus in on the frog's head. Yeah, it's one I would hold back. I like the idea. I like the style. I would just crop in just a tiny bit tighter, just because of the very out of focus part in the bottom left hand corner. That's just a little bit distracting, but you can take some of that out by taking a tiny bit off the bottom, maybe an inch off the bottom, and then a little bit in from the left hand side, but not too much, because you want to keep those lovely green things, whatever they are, plants, in. So yeah, lovely shot, well done. Didn't want to crop in anymore as the water ripples showed the movement. Yeah, I agree. I wasn't going that far up. I was keeping the ripples in, but just going up. It's about an inch on my screen, but it's not going to, perhaps not that far on yours, but maybe to the just underneath the ripple. I'll give it a try. Right, that's absolutely fine. Give it a go. That's all you can do. You know the frogs are there now, so hopefully this spring you can go back and crack on again. I found I was lucky the frog was facing me, and that's why I got so excited and nearly fell in. So it is difficult, and it is difficult to do with a tripod. Yeah, you're best off hand holding it. Have you got a macro lens?
Yeah, I think she said her RF was a macro.
Yeah, she just said he's got one of a froglet, but very tiny. Well, there will be very tiny. I didn't see any froglets. In fact, I think because I've got fish in the pond, I didn't have any tadpoles either. I'm pretty sure they were eating the frog spawn as fast as they could lay it. But yeah, great picture. And carry on. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, 35mm macro. Yes, she says that she's disabled, hard getting down to his level. Yeah, it is. It is when you're not. But yeah, congratulations. Or up. Yeah. Well done. Now, I recognise this lady, and I can't remember. Ivory Flame, that's it. She has the most wonderful features, a very sculpted face. She is elegant. I swear, if she just stood square onto you with her legs apart and her hands up down by her sides, I think she would still look elegant. She's got this beautiful bone structure in her face. She's very, very. I don't think you can take a bad picture of her. I like the background. I think the red in the background matches her hair very well, and the pose works beautifully on the chair or the seat in which she's sat. I find the vignette a little heavy. I might just have lifted that a little more, and the shadow on her neck has got a bit of a purple cast to it, as has the arm that she's leaning on. So I might be just tempted to just lift the colours on her neck and her arm, just to make it look a little bit more natural. I like the lighting in the background. I'm just a bit uncomfortable with the lighting on her neck. But yeah, as somebody said, you can't take a bad picture of her to save your life. Just watch those colours. As an experiment, what about trying it in black and white? Just to see what it looks like. It might not work for you. You might want these colours. The other thought I had was to maybe desaturate the reds just a little bit, so that you're losing some of that purple. That's the only bit I find distracting. But I love the fact, I love the shape of her body. I love the way she's not engaging with the photographer. She's not looking at him, she's looking away. So you've got that wistful thought. I think the title says it as well, the Renaissance era works very well. So there's nothing really else I can say other than maybe just lift that vignette. I find that just a bit too strong. Comments?
Hi, it's mine. Thank you. I wasn't too sure what to do with the vignette. I didn't want to crop it because I loved the material in the background and the colours. I have tried it in black and white, so because of the colours, like you said, I did want to keep them, so that's why I left it in colour. But I take on board your comments about lifting the purple and the reds a little bit, which I will go back and try.
Yeah, you could just make a selection and just reduce the colours just a little bit in that one area. You don't want to desaturate it too much, or she'll look a bit odd. But just to lift that purple out a little bit. It's just a bit, for me, it's a bit strong. But I do like what you've done with the background and the curtains. I think that all hangs together really well. And I like the netting over her legs. That works very well. And of course, she's impossible to pose badly. So
yeah, she's one of my favourite models actually.
Okay. I've never photographed her. I would like to. I just
you honestly do it. Try and do it for this year, because she's just, you don't even have to ask her to pose. She's just so softly spoken and so gentle, and she's just really an incredible model to work with. But I hadn't even noticed the shadows under her chin, so I take on point what you said for that as well.
Okay, right, no problem. That is lovely. I'd hold it back in a competition certainly for another look. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leela.
Thank you.
Beachy Head. Again, it's one of those places I've never been and would like to go. I'd like to fly my drone off Beachy Head and preferably not crash it into the ground, but I think it would be really lovely. I love the colours on the cliff side. You've got that beautiful golden colour and a lovely soft sky leading me down nicely to the lighthouse at the bottom. And we've got the shadow of the lighthouse as well being cast across the sea and onto the beach. Funnily, what I find a little bit off-putting is the figure top right. And I think it's because I see the figure and then I look down at the lighthouse and then I look back up at the figure again and then back down to, and it's almost like it's two pictures. You know, am I looking at the lighthouse or am I looking at the figure? And because I'm sort of dancing between those two things, I'm almost missing the light, the beautiful light on the cliff face itself. The background is glorious, and I love the way that you've got that gentle ripple on the sea. You know, we've not gone for this long exposure, so it's gone completely flat. We've still got those ripples, and I think that works incredibly well. There's just something about it that I find a little bit unbalanced somehow. And I'm trying to convince myself that it's the figure and the lighthouse, but I'm not sure quite what it is. But it's just a little bit uncomfortable. And I think it is because I'm trying to look at the two things at the same time, but they're just a little bit too far apart for me. Is Roy here? Okay, don't worry about it. It's one that I'm not sure I'd hold it back, but I certainly wouldn't say anything bad about it because it's got a lot going for it. If you've not taken it as a square crop to start with, you've obviously cropped some out. And I think I'd like to see the original and just see if there's any different crop that could be done to maybe strengthen it up a little bit. I think that's the fairest I can be with that one. Has anybody else got any thoughts on that one?
I don't know if it might work if you crop it a little bit at the bottom and it's a 16:9, whether that might work.
Yeah, it might.
I don't know. I'm trying to hold my hand up to see if it will.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I quite like it.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I like it. I just think it's a bit unbalanced, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the inclusion of the person on the top of the cliff, because it doesn't, to me, give me the scale that I'm searching for, because it appears to make the lighthouse much smaller than I think it is in reality. So
yeah,
I think I'd lose that person at the top, ironically.
No, I'm inclined to agree. Or moving to the very edge.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, I mean, you could have him falling down, but that would be cruel.
It would, wouldn't it?
I just rub him out.
Okie dokie.
Oh, that's nice.
Now, I really like this. It's a picture that tells the most wonderful story, isn't it? And whilst I know some judges don't like text in an image, but if it didn't say Our Wedding on that book, I think you'd have missed some of the story. I do like the wistful way he's looking down into the book, and the fact that that photograph has been included on the left-hand side, which is obviously him and his wife. Maybe she's still alive, maybe she isn't, we don't know. But it doesn't really matter in terms of the image itself. I like the fact that he's got that very tatty cabinet at the side of him, you know, high power and motor oil. It sort of reflects and builds him with the character in the image. I think that shooting it or converting it into black and white just with a little bit of a tone on it works incredibly well. We've got enough detail in his face, we can see his eyes, and I like the fact we've included the hat as well. He's well posed, it's been well lit, well put together, a great story, and I would definitely hang on to that sort of image as we went forward with the competition. Very well put together.
Thank you very much. It's mine.
Excellent.
And it's my husband.
Yeah,
it's our wedding album, and it's our wedding picture. We have a club competition coming up called Emotion. So I had this idea. My idea was that I actually was gone and that he was reminiscing about our wedding day.
Yeah, it works really well.
And he's grown that beard during lockdown.
Yeah. I mean, and the emotion is there, so you've ticked all the boxes in every way.
I just had this idea that if I was gone and he was we've had a marriage nearly 50 years this year, and he grew the beard during lockdown, and I thought the album actually is in much better condition and the photograph than it looks there, but I sort of, faded it off and made it look more old.
Oh, it's great, that. Absolutely great. Very well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you think it'll do all right in the emotion category?
I tell you what you could do if you wanted to just tweak it a tiny bit.
Okay.
The cabinet on the left-hand side,
the
left-hand side of the cabinet is just running in a little bit.
I found that, yes, and I was so, I really tried to straighten it.
Yeah,
and I found it extremely difficult.
Yeah, if you
what would you suggest?
You could straighten it up using the perspective in Photoshop. Have you got Photoshop?
I've got Photoshop and I've got Lightroom. Yes.
You could just try straightening it up a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I wondered. I kept tweaking to see what way I could straighten.
That really is nitpicking now.
Right.
Because there's nothing else. I mean, you could leave it and get away with it, but
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I tried various ways of trying to make it look straight and then make it. And then I wondered, maybe I could crop it up a bit more above,
No, the more you crop it up, the worse it'll look.
Yeah.
If you use Mike Bennett, are you there?
I am indeed, yeah.
Yeah, just explain what to do, because I can't remember.
Can I suggest?
It's
There's the perspective tool in Lightroom. You could
Okay.
using the guided edit.
Okay.
And just leave the right hand side straight,
Okay.
and just position your guideline on that edge on the left.
On the edge of the top of the cabinet?
That from the corner of the cabinet down to the bottom.
Oh, down to the bottom. Okay, I see. Yeah.
So there's one line straight, one line. It'll just square that up.
Right, I try that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Won't it affect the whole picture?
No, you just want to straighten that one line, don't you?
I know that, but it'll affect the whole picture.
It shouldn't do.
Okay, all right.
I'll try it.
Let us know, Rosie. Let us know.
Yeah, I was aware of it, and I had tried to tweak it, and I thought if I'd had before when I took the photo, if I'd set it up with the cabinet a wee bit away, I probably would have been able to work at it better. It's just a bit closer, I feel, to him. And I'm not sure I can get him to pose again.
That's always difficult, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a glass of the amber nectar would encourage him to pose again.
Yeah, it might well do, or a potching.
10 out of 10.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, I think this one must have been added after I'd looked at them, because I'm not sure I'd seen this one before.
Yeah, sorry, I think we've got two that have been added after.
Oh, don't worry, no. This is interesting. It's got a very, it's like almost a surreal effect to it. It looks like maybe a double exposure on it. It's almost a blurred effect in the background with a solid effect or a sharp effect in the front. But it actually works very well. I like the fact that we've got the figures in the background. I think they lead you through the shot. And even the bland sky, it really doesn't matter with this kind of image. Whose image is it?
Oh, hello. It's
Hi.
Me. Hi.
Is it a double exposure or more?
I'm trying to remember. I was messing with intentional camera movements and multiple exposure, so I can't 100% be sure.
Right, because it just looks like you've got one image that's slightly out of focus or blurred, and then you put the other one over the top of it. But I think it's giving it a very soft, painterly effect. And like I say, I like the way you've got the figures placed right in the middle. And like I've said before, you know, some judges will say, oh, well, it's right in the middle of the picture, you know, it doesn't follow the rule of thirds. But once you know what the rules are, then you can break them quite comfortably. There's only one little thing that I would change, and that's on the right-hand side of the picture. What looks like a block of flats.
Yeah.
I would clone them out, use some of the trees from the other side, because then it's balanced side to side. Because for me, the block of flats takes a bit of the romance away. Because what I'd like to think is that this looks like not a very elderly couple, but an older couple would come down and maybe dance on that bandstand. It's got that really romantic feel to it, and I just think it's so soft and lovely. There's nothing else I would do to it. Very well done. I do like the effects.
Thank you for your comments. I included this today because I'm not in a camera club and I've not shown my work. And during lockdown, a group of local photographers got together and they formed a little Facebook page, and the organizer put this picture up. I submitted it and I had negative feedback. And I need to grow a thick skin because it is Marmite, this kind of thing. And somebody wrote on, should have gone to Specsavers. So
the thing is, Jane, that this is your artwork, and if you like it, really and truly, that's all that matters. Just as an example, I did an image that was very blue, for want of a better description, and I put it into some local competitions, and it did quite well. I put it into an international, and I got the worst mark I'd ever had in a competition. And then somebody said to me afterwards, "So what did you do with the picture?" And I said, "I framed it and hung it on the wall because I still like it." At the end of the day, if any of you have got dogs, for example, and you take your dog to a dog show and it doesn't win, do you love it any the less? And if you love it, really and truly, that's all that matters. If you are really interested in entering competitions and club competitions, whatever, then to a degree, I think you need to take pictures for that competition. But you've always got to take pictures for yourself. And I think this is what I'm doing this more and more now, and not worrying too much about what everybody else thinks. If I like it, that's the really important part. And so the naysayers work on this principle. What do they know? Stick with it. Just keep taking pictures, enjoying your photography. Go out with a group. It's nice to go out with a group when you can. I sometimes find this, if I go out with more than a couple of people, I talk too much. And I don't take, my pictures aren't the best I could do. I find if I just go out with one person or I go out on my own, I tend to produce better images for me, because I'm concentrating a bit more on what it is I'm doing. But yeah, the only thing you could possibly do to improve this is have a little bit more detail in the sky. But quite honestly, I think it's a lovely, soft, romantic image. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Just keep having fun with your photography. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, Diane. All
right, don't worry about what other people think. It's only one other person's opinion at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all heard those keyboard warriors, haven't we, Jane? Yeah. But actually, Jane, have a look at the chat if you get a chance, because you've had some really lovely comments as well while we've been chatting. So
I've seen them, and I thank people for their encouragement. This is a lovely place to be. It's a safe and secure place to show our work. So
it is, absolutely. And it's nice to get the feedback from the photographer as well, because you can do and say whatever you feel. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion on this one, please? I wonder whether it would look quite interesting if you converted it into monochrome and put a sepia on it.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of oldie worldy style about it, and I just wonder whether a sepia with a nice sort of decent vignette that sort of fades away just might make it look really quite kind of almost poetic.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one completely. I'll try that.
Yeah, I like these muted colours. I'm going to argue with you, Chris. I like the colour version. I wouldn't touch it. But it's your picture. It's your picture, Jane. It's whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
It's lovely.
Thanks,
you.
Jane, for entering it.
This is a brave one, isn't it? Photographing art nude can be very challenging, and you really need a model like her who is very comfortable in her own skin, because if your model is even a little bit nervous, I'm afraid it shows off a million times more in the picture after. What I was attracted to here was the fact that her fingernails matched the box that she's standing on, which I thought was quite clever. Whether that was done intentionally or it was an accident is a debatable issue. I like the fact that she's holding the guitar, but I get the impression somehow that she might not actually be a guitar player, but nonetheless. Couple of things. I think she looks a little bit uncomfortable in terms of the pose, and I think it's just because of where she's got the leg that's closest to her. Now I appreciate you probably arranged her in a way that might be a little more modest, which works quite well, but just the shape of her leg, she's got a lot of weight on the back leg, which makes the knee lock back, so it's not quite as relaxed as it could be, and she's also got quite a bit of weight on the foot that's on the box, so it's not showing her ankles off as well as they could do. I like the tilt of the head and the fact that her eyes are very slightly closed. I think that works very well. It gives that emphasis on maybe a little innocence. And I also like the label at the bottom that says fragile. Does that apply to her? Is she the fragile person? The plain background, I'm not entirely convinced that's the best background. It almost looks as though there's no shadow there at all, so it's sort of stuck on a black background. There's no depth to the picture. Having said all that, the skin tones are lovely. I like the way her hair is falling around her shoulders well. The tattoo on her foot isn't terrible. I mean, some models have so many tattoos on them now, it's very difficult to find a model that hasn't. But I would just think about your pose and how that's being presented to the viewer. But the lighting is lovely. I think it's nice and soft. It's even, but I don't think that's particularly a problem. But it's the background lighting, or lack of it, I think that I find uncomfortable with this one. Would I hold it back in a competition? Probably not, because I think that there's other things you could have done with the pose, and again with the background lighting to just give us something, so it doesn't look just stuck onto a black background. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Is there any comment coming back from that?
I think the person who photographed this tunes in on a mobile phone, so I'm not sure if their microphone is working, but we can give a second or two.
Yeah, not on a mobile phone.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
The black background was an ultra black paper background, so it literally just absorbed all the light.
Right.
I take your point on the pose. Hadn't spotted the bent knee at the back. We're just really messing around at the studio with her. And she's most definitely not fragile.
And that's exactly the right thing to do, is to mess around in the studio, because by messing about, that's how you learn to play around with lighting, play around with, I was going to say play around with the model, but you know what I mean, play around with different poses and see what you can get, because that ain't the only picture you got, was it? I'm sure that there was a whole...
No, there was a whole series of them.
Yeah. I admire the fact it's been done on a mobile phone. I wouldn't have known.
It wasn't done on a mobile phone.
Oh, it was? I thought you just said it was.
No, Mark said that.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry, I thought it was calling in on a mobile phone. Sorry, Diane.
Oh, right. I stupidly believed you, Mark. That's the thing. Like,
no, that's a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Right, okay. I mean, it's a lovely camera. You're not going to go wrong with that at all. But the other thing you might want to just think about as well is if you look at her arm that's actually holding the frets of the guitar,
yeah,
how thin her arm looks there compared with the one that's around the front of the guitar. I'm afraid I don't know the right name. And I'm sure that just looks a little bit too thin. And I think it's just the angle.
It's the angle she's twisted her arm at, yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't about bad photography. This is about sorting your poses out. And the only way you're going to do that is by doing exactly what you've done, which is to go down the studio and mess about. And it will come right in the end. But I think that's a great effort.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for sending that in.
This floats my boat. So I'm going to be very biased here and say this is really the kind of stuff that I love. I like the way you've got this blue cast on it. It gives it a cold feeling. And it's, I think there's a little, maybe a bit of in-camera movement here, maybe. Or maybe not. I love the shape at the bottom. It sort of gives it a lovely U shape down the bottom. And although there's no real point of interest in the picture, there's no main focal point, I think it works really well. Someone said, is it a lens baby? Is the photographer here, is it a lens baby?
It isn't a lens baby at all. It's just some intentional camera movement and then some post-processing in Photoshop. I only got Photoshop this August. Right. So I'm experimenting. Usually I do some street photography, macro photography. I hardly ever do landscape. So this is my first attempt at doing some creative.
Well, if this is your first attempt, can you stop doing it now because you're going to spoil it for everybody else? It's absolutely a stunning image. There is just no two ways about it. I would love to see this printed big and hung on your wall. It deserves to be hung on somebody's wall. If you say this is a first attempt, then, you know, I don't know where you're going to go going forward. I'd have it on my wall. Somebody else has said they'd have it on the wall as well. Absolutely gorgeous. Everything about it is just right. I love the colour cast that you put on it. I think that works really well. I wouldn't have thought of doing blue and purple. As an aside, somebody has said, wish we knew before, Diane, what you like. Because I love this type of image and with the panning. I'll just respond to that by saying, I'm glad that you didn't know what I like, because I want to see what you like and what images you like. You're not giving images for the judge tonight, you're giving images for you. And this is a brilliant example. It's got so much depth to it.
What I found as well when I was playing around with Photoshop is from what was an ordinary image just suddenly jumped out at me, you know. So
is it more than one picture? Have you combined two pictures together? Is it?
No,
just done it in camera.
One in camera.
Yeah, it's really good. If this came up in a competition, there is no way would I not hold it back. It should definitely come up there in the top 10. Are you a member of a camera club, Celine?
I am, but I don't always put things into the camera club. And I think as time's going on, I've moved more to the creative stuff now.
Yeah. Well, do you know, you should put things in and just see how they go. By putting things into camera club competitions, you get different judges giving you different opinions, and provided you can bear somebody saying, well, I really don't like this, because somebody will, then you'll get different opinions, different ideas of people. But yeah, somebody said you've nailed it, and you have absolutely nailed this picture.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mitch Picks has said it can be quite risky in a camera club. You can either win or get thrown out with the rubbish. Yeah, and you're quite right. It depends on how open-minded the judge is. I'm finding judges to be more open-minded these days than they were previously. But yeah, you're right. I don't think this is a Marmite one though. I think this is a love one. I think you do very well with this. I would definitely get it out there into the wider world. Lovely image. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for sending it in as well, Celine, and putting your head above the parapet.
Yeah. Okay, another landscape. This one's just called Winter Landscape. And yeah, it looks quite cold, doesn't it? It's got that cold feel to it, even though there's no snow about. I think it's just got that wintry feel to it. There's no leaves on the trees. You've got that, not an atmospheric sky, certainly, but it's certainly got some detail in it. A little bit of blue, a little bit of grey, a little bit of white. The whites are not blown out. The darks in the foreground are not blacked out. There's still some detail in there. So we've got that muted colour range going into a little bit of mist towards in the background. I think the only change, not really a change, the only thing I would do to this is that if you look at the tree on the left-hand side, just to the left of that tree, there is what looks like maybe a bush or another smaller tree. And because it's very dark and it's on the edge, it sort of sticks out a little bit. And I'd be tempted to clone that out. But what I do like about this is the recession going through the image. What I would encourage people to do is to have a go at doing a landscape with a 400mm lens, or the longest lens you've got, to compress scenes and bring things closer together, and it can work really well. This doesn't look as though it's been done with a very long lens, but I do like the colours on this. Yeah. Whose picture is it? Is anybody prepared to stick their arm up? Nope. Right, that's no problem at all.
Maybe someone who's left earlier, Diane. But
all right, okay. I do like the image. I think it works very well. It's well balanced. I like the stones.
Sorry,
on the
it's
right
me.
side.
Oh, hi, Jenny.
I haven't left.
All right.
Now I put this in because it was pretty well the last landscape, one of the last landscapes I photographed before lockdown.
Right.
I'd gone up to Derbyshire with a friend who was in the same camera club as me, and we'd had a few days in the Derbyshire Dales, and it was a horrible day, and at first I couldn't see anything at all that was worth photographing, and then I spotted that tree, and in fact, just as you mentioned that blob, that black blob on the left,
yeah.
I spotted it and I hadn't noticed it before. But it was cold. It was a horrible day.
Yeah. Well, 10 out of 10 for going out on a cold day then.
Well, we pretty well had to, because we'd come up from Kent and we'd spent our money on a couple of nights in a B&B. And you just had to go out and do it, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And then, of course, when we got back home, a couple of days later, we were all locked down. And I don't think I've photographed a landscape since.
Right. Well, that one is worth the trip then, isn't it? It's another one that you could quite cheerfully frame.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have memories of things that you've done, and I think people don't print as much as they used to, and yet it's an expensive process. But if you're careful, what I've done is I bought some pre-cut mounts from Cotswold Mounts, and then I get prints done that are roughly the same size, and I put them in a mount, and I've got some frames with no glass in front. And so I just pop the mount into the frame and then tape it in, hang it on the wall, and then when I'm fed up, I can just pop out the mount, take the picture out, put a new one in, and pop it back in the frame again. So you can switch things around without it costing you anything.
Well, I do a lot of printing. Because our club does a lot of print competitions.
Right.
But I haven't printed this one yet. I haven't printed anything at all during lockdown. So I'll print this one and
try it on textured paper.
Yeah, I think I've got a pack of different, you know, kind of sample pack.
Yeah.
Of Permajet, so I'll try it on a couple of different papers.
I've used I can't say it.
Animule.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, I think it's Photo Rag, and that's beautiful because it'll give a bit more texture in the sky, because that's the only bit that's lacking, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just that little bit more, and the paper would do that for you. Yeah, lovely picture.
Oh well, thank you for your comments.
Pleasure.
I'm quite pleased with that picture. It's a nice memory of that day.
Absolutely. And that's part of enjoying your photography, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I was saying before, you've got to have stuff that you like, and you're not just shooting for somebody else. But I mean, when I was working, I was shooting for somebody else all the time. So it was really quite nice when I retired to think, oh, I can shoot for me now. Not for somebody else.
Unfortunately, during lockdown, I've not really been out. I've taken some pictures in my garden, and that's as far as I've got. So can't wait to get the vaccine.
No, and neither can I. Oh, yes, you're right. Someone has mentioned some sensor dirt. I hadn't spotted that, but yes, you have got a bit of sensor dirt.
Oh, really?
Sky at the top, yeah.
Right in the middle of the picture, in the sky.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes, I hadn't noticed that. Thank you.
Quick clone. Job
obviously, because I did put it in for a competition, and obviously the judge hadn't noticed it either. Oh, thank you for that. Golly, I'll get that sensor clean. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Jenny. And apologies for thinking that you'd left. I don't know who took each picture. I do apologise.
Oh, it's all right. I hadn't unmuted myself.
You're usually faster than that, Jenny.
Oh.
Diane, this is the penultimate one, because I have to go back and just reopen one that's been skipped for whatever reason. So this is the penultimate one now.
Now, let's see. This is another one that floats my boat because it's a little bit different. And I've seen, and I've been looking a lot at other people's work while we've been in lockdown. And I've seen some pictures done with this runny water effect in the foreground. And it's possible it's something you can do straight out of camera, but you can also apply overlays to give this effect. I think this is full of drama. It's got lots of impact. I even love the clothing that she's wearing. So, you know, she's not in the shower. It's not that kind of image. It's an image behind wet glass. As a thought, you might think about just making her a little bit more out of focus, just a tiny bit, and that'll bring out more detail in the water droplets in the foreground. But I like the way she's looking away and looking down. She's got that wistful feel. There's a story behind all this. And I think it works really well. One I would definitely hold back for another look. The only other thing that I might just, well, I will just comment on is where her ear is between the droplets looks a little bit red. I might just select that area and just tone the red down a little bit. But honestly, I'm really nitpicking now because it's just a lovely image. Is the photographer here?
Yes, I am, Diane. Thank you very much for your comments. I've taken on board what you've just said about the ear, and I'll have a go at that. Thank you.
Right, you just make a small selection in Photoshop. Have you layered it? Is it 2 layers?
No, it's straight from the camera. No.
Is it? Right.
Yep, absolutely.
So what was she behind some glass and you sprayed water?
Yes, just some glass and some water in a studio. A couple of us were working there, and I aim to get that kind of old masters type look. If that floats your boat, but there you go. Yeah,
it works very well because you've not got water dripping over her eye. That's why I wondered if it was 2 layers.
No.
But no, that's even better if you got it first time. The lighting's lovely. Yeah, very well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for sending that in. And the very last one, which for some reason skipped Diane, was this one.
Oh, fantastic. Top Banana. What a great title. I love the heart-shaped bananas. Somebody has really gone to town with this one, haven't they? It does look like she's pretty grounded on that banana. I like the way you've changed the colour. You've got the pink colour in the dress contrasting with the yellow of the bananas. It's an absolutely crazy picture. I just wondered if she didn't have that mask on. I just wondered how it'd look without the mask. You've gone to a lot of trouble with these bananas, though, reflecting them and bending them and all sorts. I think the bananas on their own are crazy enough, and then to add this figure, beautifully posed, by the way, and very well lit. I don't know whether she had the mask on at the time you took the picture, but I might be inclined to try it without the mask if the mask has been put on after. Whose picture is it?
It's mine.
Yeah, you're crazy.
Of course I am. Of course I am. That's the whole objective. It was to produce a crazy.
Did she have the mask on, or if it's something?
I tell you very quickly. I spotted the dress halfway through 2019.
Right.
I bought it, and that was going to be my brief for onward model shots.
Right.
Okay, because I wanted various models to wear the dress and photograph them in different poses. This shot, where she's got the mask on, is for a series of pictures called Dance Macabre.
Right.
You'd have to look that up on Wikipedia because it's about death and life. And so the mask represents death. And so it's a composite, obviously. I've taken this one picture. And
oh, no, it was me thinking it was the real deal, Simon. I never
no, it's a composite.
It was a composite for a minute. Sorry.
You're saying all the right things. You don't have to give me any marks. As long as you think it's mad, I'm a happy man.
It's good. I like it.
Thank you.
There's a really good one to end on as well, Simon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Diana, if it's okay with you, Diana, I'll stop sharing the screen now.
Okay.
And just sort of bring us back to reality, as it were. Diane, honestly, this has been a really fantastic evening. I mean, people feel free to switch your microphones on and give us your opinion as well. But that, you know, the conversation all the
wonderful,
way.
Wonderful evening. Yeah, fantastic.
We just on a high, didn't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely brilliant. But I would like to say, you know, on behalf of the group, you know, there's been 57 people here, 58 people here for most of the night. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to come and do this, because this is what we don't get as photographers, do we? You know, we don't get a chance to share all of our images together en masse and get critique and opinion like that. So thank you very much, Diane.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved looking at the images. I like talking about other people's work, and I would just advocate to everybody, keep looking at other people's work. Just keep looking at it, and then if it's something that takes your fancy, have a go at copying it. But when you've copied it, make it yours, make it your own. Don't just slavishly copy stuff. You know, but I think that the last one was a good one to finish on, wasn't it?
Yes.
Thanks, Simon, for that.
That's all right.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, it was lovely to hear from the other photographers. I really enjoyed that as well.
Very good.
I think as the evening went on, people loosened up a bit and found it a bit easier to talk about their own work. So that's really good.
Yeah, I think because it was not kind of aggressive and not kind of attacking in any way. You know, it was quite a supportive series of comments.
It was never meant to be, was it? It's about pointing things out that you may have missed. Hopefully making people think in different directions and different ways about their images. Because what I find is that people not you guys, obviously, but people are frightened to experiment in case it goes wrong. But what have you lost if it goes wrong now? You've not lost film, you've not lost processing time, you've lost a few pixels. And you can always delete it. You don't have to show anybody if it's that bad. Just, you know, just show us your good stuff. And that's what we've seen this evening. We've seen the good stuff. Everybody's put good pictures in, so you should all give yourselves a round of applause for putting the pictures in and showing us the good stuff. Thank you for having me.
No, I'll be sending you some more wine to help.
Yeah, I've gone off the wine now. I'm back on the busy water.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come on the mic and ask anything or say anything before we sort of switch off tonight, guys? I will just say, by the way, fantastic. You know, that's fantastic that we got 24, 25 people sending images, and it was absolutely brilliant. But
I would love.
Yes.
I would love to see another evening because I really would look forward to it.
Yeah, that's what I just put in the chat. I'd love to have another one. It's a good start.
Yeah, I would love another one.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of people, Mark, were asking about the Pet Ventosa style picture.
Yes.
You know, that you could do an hour on that. And
yeah, I was thinking.
Call it an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely look into that because I think this is what we're missing in our photography, is actually just sharing nice supportive environment.
Totally agree. I think it'd be great to have Diane back for another evening like this. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. We know what you like now, so we're all going to be reading RCM.
I'll tell you what you can do. If we do this again, I'll show you some of my pictures and you can critique them.
Yeah.
Oh, good idea. I'm thick-skinned. I don't care. George knows. Keith knows. Mike knows.
I'm looking forward to your next one on the 12th. Is it the 12th of May?
Yeah.
We've got you.
Gosh, is that another one?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the 12th of
We've got
May.
you doing your straight.
Yeah.
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 No pressure, Diane, but that room's nearly full already.
I know, and I've got to do. I've got Odd Things Part 2, haven't I? And I'm halfway through it now.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, well, thank you very much, everybody.
This is the best thing that's come out of lockdown, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to have these kind of meetings with people that we'd never normally be able to book. In our clubs.
I think it also helps where everyone's feeling a little bit down and they're not sure, and I think it's a good boost to get together.
Yeah, it's nice to come on and have a bit of a laugh, isn't it?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
look at each other's work and.
And it was totally relaxing, sitting back in your own sitting room and watching and listening. It was fantastic. Loved it.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
maybe I'll have had a haircut by next time I see you. No chance going forward at the minute.
Fingers crossed for everybody.
I love it, Simon.
I know, it's a year's work.
Love it.
So I'm just reading what's in the chat. Thank you very much for saying nice things. That's much appreciated.
No, well, better stop the recording since we're just saying goodbye to everybody.